Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining me on part 4 of the reading of my story. I'm trying to get through these. I really want to get them done. I want to just move out of this part of what I'm talking about on YouTube. I want to get into some other things. So I'm going to try to wrap it up today. Where I left off, if you've been following along, and if you haven't, that's totally fine. But if you want to, this is the story that I tell about my time when I was 5150'd and thrown into a psych hospital in 2015. And I wrote it all down in, I think it was 2017. It might have been 2018. I wrote down the entire experience. So I thought kind of maybe before I grow my channel, this is a really good thing to put out on my channel because I don't want to open myself up to so much with so many people. Like I like to keep these topics kind of small in my world, but I do want to grow into some other things, so I want to get on with it. And I am on page, my font was pretty big in this. I can't find my font size at the moment. I don't want to mess with anything, but I am on page 65 of 78. So I really think that I can finish it today. So I'm going to give it a shot here and see. Now, I mentioned in my last video that it's going to start to get personal. This gets pretty personal with me. And I have not talked about my childless journey on YouTube as of now yet, but I'm going to start today. And I don't remember what all is in here. I'm reading it right along with you. It's kind of like reading it for the first time. There are things that trigger my memory some where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Totally, I remember that. But I've really put this behind me. So I don't know where this is going. I have my tissues in case, but I'd really rather not cry if I can help it. But I'm going to get into this a little bit and see where this takes us. I'd like to get through the end. And I brought my mouse up for scrolling. Maybe that'll keep me from bonking the table so it doesn't shake so much. So the quote that I left off with, it's anonymous, at the end of part 3 is, "There's a unique pain that comes from preparing a place in your heart for a child that never comes." Let me just make sure everything looks good with my recording. Yeah, everything's going well. Okay, we'll go ahead and start. My husband and I discussed the topic of starting a family the fall before I landed in that mental hospital. This would have been the fall, I think it was October of, we either talked about it in September or October of 2014. I always thought I would be a mother. It was a big part of my plan. The decision to not become a mother has been harder for me than anyone can possibly imagine. I still cry about it. That was 7 years ago. I still cry about it today. So it is what it is. A part of me thinks that I always will. I have come to a place where I wholly realize that my mind cannot handle the emotions that would accompany motherhood. This realization has made me understand the unfairness that I would bestow on a child as well as myself. As one who struggles to handle severe anxiety, adding children into this picture would escalate my mental weaknesses. As someone who also struggles to handle feelings of being elated and joyful, this too would be an obstacle entering motherhood. I cry at all ends of the emotional spectrum, even with the assistance of medication. Kristen Bell said it best, "If I'm not between a 3 and a 7 on the emotional scale, I'm crying." I honestly believe that the financial stresses alone could easily be enough to push me over a dangerous edge. It's not a matter of control, it's a matter of management. I can manage this in the quiet and peaceful life I have. The screams of a baby and the demands of motherhood, not so much. No matter the level of wisdom that went into this choice, it will never erase the ache I feel when I know that I will not be a mother. Instead, I'll just have to serve my love to the children that are in my life, my amazing nieces and nephews that I absolutely adore with every fiber of my childless being. This aspect of my life is often very difficult for other women my age to understand. Many of my online friends have already full families. I'm so fortunate to have support from my family, my husband, and a close girlfriend who herself doesn't show interest in becoming a mother either. That friendship and family support is amazing to me, and I value all of them more than I can truly convey. Okay, I'm going to talk about this just a little bit before I go on to the next part, because I think that was kind of all I say about motherhood and not being a mother. When I wrote this, I can kind of remember the mindset I was in when I wrote this. Now, my mind still feels a lot the same about that. But I do feel like I could handle it better now. Like I've been medicated and stable long enough that I'm very well in touch with reality at this point. And if a child entered my world, for whatever reason, I think I could handle it. But the chances of that happening are very, very slim. And I have my hard moments. Christmas, holidays can be tough. Mother's Day. My mom always gives me flowers on Mother's Day and makes a deal about it for me. Like, it's really, really sweet. And there's just some moments that are hard, you know. But and like even watching like my brother's children, like going through their, you know, milestones and reaching like new levels of their growth. Like his oldest one is 13 and their youngest is almost 6. So there's like all of these chapters that I get to watch. And yeah, it makes me a little sad that, you know, I won't have a daughter to go to, or a son to go to their wedding. Like, you know, like it's hard. And, you know, a lot of people don't really worry about the future with children because you assume to a certain degree that they're going to care for you when you reach an age where you need help. I have no idea what the future holds for me, and that's very tricky. Like I can ruminate on that way too much if I don't remind myself that the path that I'm on, it's the wise choice. Like I made the wise choice. My husband and I together made the wise choice here. And probably just within the last year, I started realizing there's treasures to be found on any path that you find yourself on. Like there is joy to be had. It doesn't mean that it erases the grief of not being a mom, but there's still joy to be had. And one of the quotes that I used to say when it came to that choice with my husband and I is, I would rather have no children with the right man than to even have one with the wrong one. And I'm telling you all right now, I have the right man in my life. And we just celebrated our 14-year anniversary. I've known him, I think, for 21 years. So he's a big chunk of my life. And I'd rather have no kids with the right man than to even have one with the wrong one. So that's where I stand on that, and I have the right man. All right. Anonymous. I need you to love me a little louder today. I've also found that the better I feel from day to day, the harder I have to fight sometimes against bipolar disorder. The strength that my mind has gained has also risen the strength of the bipolar within. The strength that my mind has gained has also risen the strength of the bipolar within. I don't know that I feel that way anymore. It's a fight worth fighting through. When it comes to my mind, fighting for my sanity is the most important aspect of my life. This sanity is not just something I can wish into my life. I have to fight for it every day and with every decision and thought I make. It's like deprogramming my mind away from a form of cult mind control. I still think that way about it, yes. However, in this case, it's not a person, group of people, or false faith forcing me to think a certain way. It's my mental illness working at its most efficient. I've battled my body many times, 10 surgeries in total to be exact. But to battle your mind, that's a different fight. Bipolar is literally always on my mind. I might have to quote myself moving forward with that because that's a good quote. Bipolar is literally always on my mind. I asked God, I asked God, why are you taking me through troubled waters? He replied, because your enemies can't swim. I think this gets into the other day I did a video on bipolar guilt and when to let it go. And I was telling a story about a former friend that I had, and I named her Sarah in my story to protect her identity. But I think that this might get into a little bit about what happened with Sarah. So shortly after I left the hospital, the absent friend who had sat in the garage during those first signs of terror stated boldly to me that I was simply far too smart for mental illness. She also validated the embarrassment and shame I suffered from after my horrible experience. I have since lost her friendship as well as several others due to a lack of the true understanding required of relationships that involve people with severe mental disorders. Some of those former friends showed signs during my plummet to rock bottom that as they struggled with the occasional bout of depression and or anxiety, they fully comprehended my bipolar and assumed the complete knowledge and understanding of conclusive mental disorders. I think that still today. I think that there's a lot of people out there, like if you have clinically diagnosed bipolar disorder and you tell somebody that you're struggling and they say something about, oh, my anxiety and oh, my depression, and they don't have a clinical diagnosis, sure, they're being empathetic to a degree, but there's still this separation between the two. Because I have done some research on bipolar disorder in other ways, and there are cognitive issues. My memory, if you can't tell, my memory is kind of poor, and that's one of them. That's one of the cognitive issues that bipolar disorder can bring with it, a broken memory. I have a tendency to like confuse. I'm better now than I've been in the past, but I still do it. I kind of confuse. Hi, kitty. I kind of confuse. I don't know. Like I have a hard time. Sometimes I just have a hard time like being able to organize my thoughts. Even still, there's another element there. It's not just about depression and sadness and anxiety. There's this whole other level there, and it's that's why you got to be careful about who you choose to talk to about this, because some people just can't. They just don't know how. They don't know how to. And like my best friend that I talked about in here, she doesn't have bipolar disorder or any diagnosed mental illness, and she's great to talk to. Like there's just some people out there that are really willing to learn and listen, but some of the friends that fell away, they certainly couldn't do that. Okay, so let's see. There may be similarities between the symptoms we share when it comes to depression and anxiety, but bipolar is a different issue at hand in a category all its own, just as schizophrenia, obsessive-compulsive disorder, eating disorders, and PTSD. Bottom line is this: if you are afflicted with a quantifiable mental illness, A, it cannot be compared and related to every other mental condition out there, and B, it has nothing to do with IQ or intellect. The truth is that disorders of this caliber are, in fact, a combination of genetic and DNA factors that can begin at any age, even as early as in the womb of our mothers. I was 33 by the time mine peaked. There are even cases where some patients can be consumed by more than one clear-cut mental illness at a time. Also, if you have issues with alcoholism or drug abuse, the symptoms of a more severe underlying mental illness or illnesses can be far more destructive. To assume that one can simply overcome an illness of any kind using their own intellect is an asinine assumption at best. If Ludwig van Beethoven, Isaac Newton, Vincent van Gogh, Winston Churchill, and Albert Einstein couldn't outsmart their bipolar disorders, who was I to do so? I talked about that a little bit when that Sarah girl, said that I was too smart for bipolar in that bipolar guilt video that I did like a week or whatever ago. I talked about that a little bit. Yeah, if they can't outsmart their disorders, then who am I? I'm not, I'm not a superhero. Okay. Quote, "You can do 99 things for someone and all they will remember is the one thing you didn't do." Quote, "I may think of you softly from time to time, but I'll cut off my hand before I ever reach for you again." An overwhelming sense of guilt is one of the most prominent signs of bipolar. So when people begin to step away from relationships with people who suffer from it, many, such as myself, will assume full responsibility of the fallout and take on an enormous sense of blame. The fact that I have managed to rise above this aspect of my disorder is a valuable, very valuable asset. Am I at fault? Sure, about half as much as I can figure. But I will no longer blame myself entirely for people who choose to step out of my life for any reason. Relationships are always a two-way street. If you truly care for someone, you will not allow them to completely blame themselves for all the mistakes, including the ones you made, within the dynamic of it. Empathy and forgiveness does, in fact, begin where acceptance of imperfections of others as well as ourselves are evident. Okay, what was I going to say about this? Oh, this is what I was going to say. This is so cool reading this back because, okay, when I was talking about this guilt the other day, like this Sarah and how I took on all the guilt, when I kind of put some distance in between us and she got mad. And right here, this like triggered something in me. Let me go back. Relationships are always a two-way street. And if you care for someone, you will not allow them to completely blame themselves for all the mistakes within the dynamic of it. It's funny, like now looking back as I've processed through this, I can see where I still have, like, I use the language I used back then to move forward, like the two-way street thing. It's just weird. Maybe it's just me, but the processing of it is really kind of cool to see, because where I have forgotten a lot about what I wrote here, there's some parts where I'm like, man, I pretty much said that word for word in that other video on YouTube a week ago. So it's kind of cool. Okay. Anonymous. It's not the load that breaks you, it's the way you carry it. Oh, no, that's not anonymous. That's Lou Holtz. And then this one is Layla Delilah. She remembered who she was and the game changed. Love that. Okay, this talks a little bit more about that vision that I had in the first video, part 1, where I had that like glow, like black glowing orb of negative energy in the back seat of my car. And I saw it this is just my vision. I saw it in the rear view mirror, and then I tried to think it away and sabotage it and all this. And then I looked up at the mirror and it was gone. And I thought that I had gotten rid of it out of my car. And then I sensed that it was like right here, and I looked over and it was in the passenger seat. And then it was growing arms, and it started reaching for my steering wheel. So it was trying to take over my car. And the metaphor there is that this vehicle is my mind. So this goes back to that vision. And that's the whole thing that led me to the psych hospital. I hadn't thought about my vision much since this ordeal took place, but looking back on it now, I do believe that this energy had been in my vehicle all along. During the onset of the manic episode that landed me in the hospital from hell, I had a sense of familiarity similar to a sensory memory that you might get from a certain sound or smell. I remember that. I had this like euphoria come over me right before I went to the hospital, like the day before, and I had this euphoric whatever, and it was like, oh my gosh, I've had this before. Like I could tell, like this wasn't new. I've had this before. It was weird. Let's see. I remembered this feeling as if I'd experienced it before, not only prior to my diagnosis, but as a young child. There was no new stranger in my vehicle, just my awareness of it had developed. My vision of that country road is very different today. The cabin is now void of the evil that once rode shotgun and stretched out its appendages and placed them on the wheel. Now it resides only in the trunk of this vehicle. It is baggage that I'm learning to travel with. It now has an official designation, no longer nameless. It is bipolar type 1. The nighttime dawns and the moon finally rises. The noises on the highway are back. There's a new balance that was lacking before. A very important balance that, when neglected, tipped the scales between sense and nonsense. The sincere help that I needed was eventually met with the assistance of medication, real friends, and my family support, knowledge, education, and the taking back of my power. Somewhere between then and now, I pushed the paws of this dark invader off the steering column and refused to allow it to enjoy a window seat along my journey any longer. It's still there. It will always be there. It can't leave, and I can finally accept that. It can affect the mechanics and electronics from time to time, but it can't be dropped off at the next bus station or chucked from the window. I know that the more I deny its existence and attempt to push it away, the stronger it becomes and the tighter it latches on. This was the ultimate puzzle for me, and with a lot of help post-hospitalization, I managed to decipher it. I turned my captor into my captive, and the imprisoner of my mind into my prisoner. If I am the author, then that means that I do the sentencing. The minute this energy entered my life, it attempted to take over my position as the driver many times. However, the moment I became aware of its presence, it systematically began to lose its freedoms to dictate my journey any longer. Unfortunately, I had to lose control to appreciate the value of it. Yes, I lost some friends along the way. Quotes. And as it turns out, that's okay too. You live to learn that the ones who stayed by your side at your worst are the ones to keep anyway. The journey is too short to spend it with people who make you feel alone, and that has never meant more to me than it does now. The road is longer, the ride a little rougher, the curves a little tighter, and a lot less certain. There are more potholes, speed bumps, and the scenery is a bit more weathered, but the fact still remains, I, and I alone, am the only one who will drive myself to my final resting place, to my final breath. I will not be chauffeured there by mental illness. This is not only a matter of opinion, that is a matter of promise. Quote, when thinking about life, remember this: no amount of guilt can change the past, and no amount of anxiety can change the future. It's okay. Oh, this is another quote. Quote, it's okay if the only things you did today was breathe. Both anonymous, because I don't know who they are. And then at the very bottom, it says, not the end, semicolon. That's how I ended my story. And yeah, I very much feel like I still am driving through life with this prisoner, with this prisoner thrown in my trunk. You know, like I figured out a way to get it out of my immediate area, not deny its existence in my life, but get it out of my immediate area, get the danger away. The more we deny our mental illnesses, I think the louder our mental illnesses will be. You know, like I think that there's power. There's power in knowledge and education and learning how to control the demons and throwing them in the trunk and just driving along the road, you know, knowing that it's there. It's going to be there with me until the day I die, but it no longer dictates my journey. And yes, I have my days, you know, I might, on my metaphorical road, I might blow a tire, or, you know, I might run out of gas. I might hit a pothole and things might be kind of weird. Like there's always things, but having that mental illness locked up in the trunk of my car allows me to think clearly to handle the things that are going to come down the road. It's been 6 or 7 years since I wrote that story, and it'll be 9 years this April since I was admitted to that psych hospital. And, you know, maybe a stronger person would have been so upset by the way this hospital treated them that they would, you know, go out and protest and, you know, write their congressman. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have the bandwidth to do the work. And there's a part of me that worries about the people that are in there today because they're not getting the care that they need. And then we wonder why we have problems as a country. We're not listening. Hospitals aren't listening to us. Psychiatrists aren't listening to us. Don't be so surprised. I mean, it's like, well, duh. I'm kind of, you know, if anything, I'm surprised that the world actually isn't worse. Believe it or not, because we're not doing anything for these people who need actual, very intense help. And you know what? Asking questions and listening is not rocket science. It's not a hard thing to do. Like, that's partly why I want to do a video on mindfulness, is because a part of me, like, being mindful helps you really listen and take in what is being said. And it allows you to contribute to a conversation in a very deep and relatable way. Like it's not rocket science, and we're not teaching it in schools. It's amazing to me. This world, it broke me. The system broke me. And thankfully and luckily, I had the fortitude, the determination, the perseverance to fight my way to better days. But not all people are like that. Some people need more help. I wonder how many of the women who, like I said in my last video, were just like, it seemed like they were content to just stay there for a month. I wonder how many of them are repeated visitors there. Like it's their way to get a break. I have no idea. But it wasn't good for me, but I will say this. It scared me to death in such a way that I will do whatever it takes to never go back. So I guess I have to give them that credit. As much as I don't want to give them any, their poor treatment of me, their negligence, there's so many words. Their incompetence, their being unqualified, like all of these words, like it scared me. That place, I really, I will never go back. I cannot go back to that place. So I guess, they get 1 point, but I get all the rest. All right. I got through my story. Yay. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know some parts of it were hard and I kind of was up and down, but I am bipolar. So I think that I was up and down on a healthy wave and not, like, So, but I did want to get these done and over with because I've got other stuff that I want to put out there that's just more of a broad thing that might, help a bigger community with more relatable content. So I do want to do that. I want to, I really want to do the astrophotography stuff. The thing about that, though, that I'm going to have to figure out a way to do it. It's hard to video it at night when we're like opening up stuff, like I'll have to do some stuff during the day. So I'm going to work on that. My husband and I'll get him more involved. Maybe that'll help me out with that. But the bipolar stuff, I'm feeling good about what I'm putting out there. The mental illness stuff, the awareness, the, just, if you ever end up in that situation at a hospital like that, I'm sorry. I hate that for you. But it does not have to be the end. And the ways that they say to do stuff doesn't have to be how you have to do stuff, which is just like, break away. Go the opposite way. All the fish are going that way. Go the other way to get help because these places aren't going to help you at all. You're just going to end up back in there and back in there until you die. It's on you. You have the choice. You have the power. So take it into your hands and run with it and save your life from these kind of organizations because they're not doing any good for the mental health community or awareness. They should be ashamed of themselves. Each and every person that works there should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. All right. Well, off I go. It's been almost a half an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and take off. Not sure what's coming next, but I plan on putting more out there in the next few days. So, stay tuned, and I hope you'll join me for the ride. All right. Have a great day. Take care.